Welcome to FYI. I'm Barry ZeVAN, and our subject today is human trafficking. And I'm very pleased and proud to say that we have a lady who is an expert in this horrendous subject. Her name is Trina Deiss. She is a registered nurse, but also the co-founder of an organization called United One Front, who are related to the Masgutova Foundation, about whom we've spoken several times in the past and interviewed the people from that organization, actually called the Masgutova Neuro-sensory Motor Reflex Integration System. And welcome, Trina. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, we have known each other for a while during some of the work with Masgutova, and it's just, to me, it's very ironic, actually, that this morning we're taping this for people who will see this 10 years from now on YouTube. We're taping this on April 27, 2018, but this morning on NBC's Today Show with Megyn Kelly, her guest was a girl and her mother. The girl had been abducted, actually, at age 15 to get into human trafficking for 108 days. And she described the horror of that experience, but the mother actually prevailed, and the people who created this terrible situation for this girl are now serving 24-year and 16-year prison sentences. And President Trump actually signed a bill stating that we have to attack this situation even more. So congratulations for your work. How did this all come about?
Our family actually we were exposed to human trafficking through a series of events, and we recognized that we really knew nothing about it within the metro, within Minnesota. And then as we looked into it, we began to see that there's indeed a deep issue here, even in our own state. And through that, we decided it'd be nice to do an awareness event. Northwestern was gracious and hosted our first event, and we called it Breaking the Silence. And we hosted an event which we invited people to come that were already in the process of, whether it be intervention, giving homes to people once they are rescued, the police force, the FBI. And so we brought everybody together to put out an event to bring awareness to the issue here within our state. And then through that, we recognized that many of the people were working solo against this cause with human trafficking. And we decided, you know, there needs to be some connectivity to all these organizations, because if we bring everybody together, there's going to be more energy, there's going to be more strength and more voice against the horrendous crime. And that's how we came up with the name United One Front. And so in doing that, we recognize now that many people were bringing awareness to it. Many people were now aware that there was an issue because of other organizations, as well as our government. The No Wrong Door policy was being introduced. So many changes were taken into effect, and we recognize where the greatest need now is: how do we bring hope and how do we bring healing to those who have surrendered or suffered through the horrific things that happen with human trafficking or abuse. So how do we prevent it? How do we keep girls and boys from being subject to it? And then once we get them out, once we get them into a safe place, how do we bring success? How do we bring hope and healing to them? And so that's when we decided to come up with a curriculum. And what we do is we bring support and training to caregivers of children from hard places. So that could be adoption as well. It could be the foster care system. And then it transitioned to where we specialize with safe homes, or people that are bringing care and support to victims of human trafficking.
So how did that evolve to be part of the Masgutova group?
Well, it's really unique. So as we began bringing our support and training to the caregivers, and we start looking at what is really out there for them. You know, how do we transition? How do we bring hope and healing? How do we address the deep needs of the girls and boys that have been trafficked or horrifically abused without re-traumatizing them? Because you don't want to bring them out and go through the normal talk therapy that psychologists use. And so everybody in this industry recognizes we need something better. We need something that reaches to the sensory system of these victims that have learned to survive by basically shutting off. And so that's when we heard of Dr. Masgutova. And we went, my daughter and I actually went to Washington, D.C. to see her at one of her conferences for PTSD. And it only took us maybe 5 minutes of hearing her lecture to recognize this was indeed the missing piece that we needed. And then, you know, you couldn't hold us back after that.
Oh, that's wonderful. So how many years have you been involved with Masgutova?
Just over 2.5.
Wow.
But because we saw the availability of this to help and be a key answer to the cellular memory of the abuse, to be able to free people from not just the mental and emotional, but the physical results of abuse, we decided this had to take priority. And so put everything on hold for a year to receive intense training directly from Dr. Masgutova, Pamela, who you've also spoken with as well. And so traveled around the country, taking the classes necessary, and being under the direct tutelage of Dr. Masgutova.
Have you been surprised about how much human trafficking there is? I mean, when you started into this, did you have any inkling that this was so prevalent worldwide?
I think I probably fell into the typical American that feels that south of the border, we know it happens. You know, Thailand, all the typical things or things that you see on movies. And in Europe, the fight has been great there. Amsterdam, for example. But then once we started seeing the patterns here and what it looked like here, and within the U.S., we have a horrific issue. And we have children that, because of the foster care system and different maybe scenarios that put kids at vulnerability, and what that looks like. And you know, the people that are in human trafficking are predators. And they know what they're doing, and they know how to get the victims. They know how to lure them in. It's not always that off-the-street kidnapping that happens. Sometimes there's grooming that takes place. So if we're going to address it, we need to address it in such a way that really intercepts the actions of these predators.
Do you think it should be, maybe it's an obvious question, but an obvious answer, do you think it should be taught in schools almost from the very beginning to watch out for bad people?
You know, we did the campaign Danger Stranger back in the late 80s, early 90s, right? Teaching kids to be cautious of strangers. I think we need awareness, and we need to address the pornography issue. And now we need to address the pornography issue with our children. It kind of hit us by storm. Pornography is part of the big add-on that comes along with trafficking. So we need to give stability, we need to give support and training to parents, we need to give education to our children so they see what it looks like, so they don't have the mindset that it's only south of the borders or in Europe, to break that naivety. But we need to bring support and training to parents as well, and we need to reinforce the foster care. And that's where Dr. Masgutova, with her program that she has, with the neurosensory motor reintegration, it brings freedom for children to, to feel safe, to be able to function on a level that allows them to be free of those hindrances that they face.
I have worked in several countries overseas, but there was one, which I won't name, wherein the mores of the people were so very much different than ours. I remember going into a supermarket once, and just almost directly at the side of the comic book section or the coloring section were porno magazines in the same spot. And I'm thinking to myself, and these people told me, they said, "Oh, we don't think anything of this." Oh, really? Have you run into that?
as far as the naivety of the intrusion of pornography into
A society
a
or a culture,
society?
yeah.
Yes, I mean, you look at TV now, how it's changed over the years. You look at what our children are being exposed to, a highly sexual society. But with that comes consequences. It's not just about freedom. We need to protect our children because our children don't have the capacity to make sound judgment in the realm. We're a busy society, but we need to prioritize our children and their well-being and their safety. And I think in reality, if you talk to any parent, they want to protect their children. You talk to any society, they do want to protect their children. And I think what we have is a naivety of the severity, and that's why it's good that people speak out against the severity or the regression. How does pornography actually have a role with human trafficking? Do they coincide, and on what level? And once we start connecting all that with the general society, I think they want to step up and they want to protect. And they want to protect the least of us.
I remember in a talk you gave at our Rotary in Golden Valley a few weeks ago or a few months ago, you had mentioned you had worked with even people who were into prostitution in some countries. We won't name the countries, but how do you measure the results that you get after you talk to these girls, especially saying, yes, we're going to change or we're going to whatever?
Right. And again, to make it clear, we don't actually go in and do the, if you would, the rescuing of the girls and boys that are being trafficked.
Oh.
We go in and we bring support and training to the organizations, whether they be national, international, that are actually doing the work. So we've been in other countries where they have children's homes, for example, that they bring children in that have been trafficked or have been on the street or vulnerable to trafficking. Or other organizations that are reaching out and have an outreach to maybe the women that are being prostituted, like in Europe. And what we do is we come in and we bring training to them so that they understand the dynamics with which that they're working. Because it's not that easy. You think you take a child, you bring them in, you give them love, you give them food, you give them shelter, surely they'll want to choose that. And where people often struggle is, why do they go back into prostitution? Or why do they run away from this very safe place with safe people that only want to help them, right? So we struggle sometimes with that. So if we understand the dynamics of what happens in trauma, then we understand why they make those choices. And we understand how to give them opportunity to be safe. We understand how we sometimes have to protect them from their own decision making until they get healthy enough to make their good decisions, you know. And so that's why when we start talking about trauma, it's multifaceted. It's complex trauma. Anybody being rescued from human trafficking has undergone complex trauma. Anybody coming from sexual abuse has underwent complex trauma. And so usually your number one caregivers that are in this industry are people that maybe come from their own hurts and they don't want other children to be hurt, or they're coming from their own struggles, or they want to give hope. They're very caring and loving and endearing people, but you have to be educated. You have to understand the dynamics, and you have to have support. And that's where often the countries we've gone to, or even here in the US, the support, like how do we get over these hurdles, or how do we create this safe place and create an environment that understands the ever-shifting process of somebody, you know, coming to a point of healing. And so that's where if anybody goes to Dr. Masgutova's site and understand, this woman has seen trauma. She was one of the key players in bringing these children from the UFA wreck into safety. So her way of dealing with trauma and the plan that she came up with this sensory motor reintegration is the soundest thing that we have out there for boys and girls that have been trafficked, or even women, adult men and women. We've worked at on PTSD conferences where people are getting great freedom from the lies of the past that have held them back, just simply because Dr. Masgutova took the time and the energy and created an education system to train people to be able to do this.
Yeah, and for those who aren't familiar, thanks for explaining that, because Dr. Masgutova actually is a genius.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's an incredible lady. But for those who aren't aware, Ufa was a horrendous train wreck in Russia. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then she rescued these people. So that's, I just wanted to clear up for those who didn't know what Ufa was. And of course, she has helped also in Sandy Hook and floods and hurricanes and disasters of all sorts, helping the people. Do you get feedback from those organizations who have been working with the prostitution situation in a particular country? Do you get feedback from them eventually that what you've offered them has helped them?
Definitely. So we were in South America, and we went as United One Front to bring the support and training to them, to educate them. This is what it looks like. This is what happens. These are the stages that these boys and girls will likely go through. This is why they may hoard food. We talk about even the physiological effects of trauma. So we get feedback from that saying, oh, this is amazing. I wish we had known this sooner. Or now you're putting words to what we are actually feeling. So it helps to endorse that they're on the right track of doing the right things. So we get feedback on that end, but as well, because Rebecca and I are both core specialists with MNRI, what we do is then in the evening, we do treatments on the boys and girls that have been rescued. And the feedback there is tremendous. So many of the children that we had been able to treat in this non-traumatizing way, the feedback we get is maybe for the first time they're able to breathe or feel that they're breathing, to feel like they have some sort of control in their life, to feel freedom. I know one person specifically told Rebecca that for the first time they felt that they really could have safe touch.
Now, Rebecca is your daughter,
Yes.
and also a registered nurse. Yeah, so.
And a core specialist with MNRI.
Yeah, and that's great that it's a family affair. But you're based here in Minnesota. But do you feel that, even though you had mentioned that it's obviously not just in foreign countries, but in in the United States too, do you feel the progress has been stronger here in the United States, or is it equal all the countries to which you visit?
Well, in many other countries it's more out in the open, and it's had dialogue or movies have been made. So I don't know if it's fair to say one country is addressing it quicker or better than another, because there's so many dynamics that come into play, and the need is so great. And there's few people. The more people we get involved, the more people that have awareness, the more people that are willing to support their local organizations, whether it be here or international. Or we have many organizations that are based in the US that are doing work internationally. The point is we all just need to step up as a society. We need to find where we can be involved, where we're gifted, because not everybody is gifted in every way, and then we need to find that avenue that meets those needs that we can step up and have a voice. And part of it is moms like this young lady that was on this interview this morning, willing to stand and fight and say this is not okay, for a president to say this is not okay. We're going to have stricter, stronger laws. And the sooner as a society we see the need and we are willing to get our head out of the sand and go forward, we'll empower our children to be safe. We'll empower our families to be strong.
The predominant thinking, which is probably very correct, is that men are the predators. Are there any situations where females have been predators also?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We went to one of the largest brothels in South America, and it was led by a woman. So women, mothers, grandmothers, once you kind of cross a line into darkness, there are no more paradigms.
So the gender, it's both genders.
It is predominantly a male-based drive that is there. You know, women are being brought out, or girls are being brought, or boys are being brought to, you know, men for the most part. But there's definitely women that are predators as well.
What about the countries where the culture doesn't exactly accept it, but it's more loose than our society? What about their governments? Do you ever envision a time when countries where the mores are a little looser, they're going to crack down and say, hey, wait a minute, this is wrong?
Right. I think the more we speak out, the more we put our feet in the ground and say no more, that's never okay to hurt a child, male, female, it doesn't matter. The more voice that is there, the more exposure that is there, I think the pressure on these countries will increase. It's a moneymaker. And for some, it's a way of life. And so the more we stand up here in Europe, in Canada, South America, the US, especially the US, the more we crack down on the predators, the wealthy males that are going to some of these countries and buying young children, the more we crack down on them, the more pressure that we will put on, not just as a society or as a civilization, but also as a military or as a federal progress, that will end up putting more pressure on their political government as well. So if we just focus on being stronger and speaking out and empowering our young people, educating our young people and families, and then also standing against the predators, it's going to trickle down and put more pressure on the countries that are providing this.
Do you think we need more media exposure on a consistent level to educate people about this?
I think media certainly helps, because without it, many people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might hear, you know, from a local organization, or you see something on the news, but I think an awareness of the widespread effect is needed.
What do you actually tell the organizations who help the people who are in prostitution, et cetera? Is there any magic words, so to speak?
Well, we thank them. We thank them for doing their work, because it's exhausting. You know, they know that they're against a very difficult, dark task. So first of all, we thank them, because they need that as well. There's few people doing a great work. You know, it's almost always like that, right? And then we encourage them to understand the dynamics of what trauma looks like. That these children are coming in, or these men and women are coming in very hurt, and they've learned to survive. If they're there, they're very intelligent people, because they learned a way to survive. So be patient, be loving, and just do the best work you can. And then on top of it, then provide the right counseling and the right help and support for these girls and boys to get the most that they can before they make a decision to go back. And that's where Svetlana's work is so important, because without that, we really diminish the odds of really bringing healing to these boys and girls.
How many days a year do you work?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. What is work? Work and passion, and you know, it all kind of blends together. It's at this point in our life, in our family's life, it's really a lifestyle.
So it's continuous.
It's continuous.
365 days.
You never know who you meet and who you need to just show love.
Are you ever surprised at the background of some of these girls and boys who have been traumatized? Are they always from poor family situations? Or?
No, that's a misnomer. I think people don't understand that. It could be a wealthy home. It could be the poorest of homes. It could be a very religious family to an atheist family. There's no, pornography has kind of leveled the playing ground.
Is that a surprise to you?
It's,
when you started into this?
It's very saddening. It's very saddening.
Yeah. What do you do to, how do you address the parents when you possibly finally meet some of the parents of people, of the trafficked people who have been trafficked?
You mean like the girls and boys who have been victim and you meet their parents?
Yes.
Or ones that
they're-
have perpetrated to their parents?
No, the parents of the children who have been victimized. Do you ever meet them?
You know, I don't know that I've directly met parents, caregivers, adoptive parents, you know. I don't know that I've actually met parents or parents that weren't perpetrators. So maybe the parents were part of the problem with why the child, you know, is there. Other than just encouraging parents, it's mostly been foster care or adoptive parents that we spoke to, or safe homes. And it's the same thing, just be patient, be diligent, just have fortitude and press forward.
Yeah, and how would someone contact you?
They can obviously go to our website, www.unitedonefront.org, or more importantly, if you are a foster parent, and because many children that have been fostered are coming from abuse or neglect, if you are an adoptive parent, especially even overseas, many of those children have been abused or neglected. You need to really reach out to the website for Svetlana, Dr. Masgutova, MNRI, because there is where you're going to get some of your greatest tools.
Yeah.
In order to really find a specialist that can help with the PTSD that these children are coming with.
Okay, and the website is www.masgutovamethod.com, and also for the foundation, www.masgutovafoundation.org. And I can't thank you enough, Trina, for helping hopefully a lot of people who are watching this and say, hey, there's hope, and we can get rid of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
thank you very much for being concerned about this, because it's very important. And if we don't speak out, if we don't stand up, it will continue.
well, you're welcome, and thank you. And we really appreciate it. Matter of fact, in my book, I do reference the Masgutova organization about how great they are and all the great work you do. So,
Absolutely.
many thanks to you.
Thank you very much, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and we'll see you next time.